Hey guys, so I have a story for you guys, and I think this story encapsulates this idea of not flying too close to the sun. The story of Icarus, right? You probably heard that story. He flew too close to the sun, burned his wings, and fell to the ground. There's much more. That's obviously a very shortened version of the story, but basically, to give context to what I'm talking about, yesterday we had a meeting with our builder. We are building an apartment complex here in town, and it's pretty exciting. I can do actually a walkthrough of it. I can film and upload that for you guys if you guys would be interested in it. Something that me and my dad are doing. We've been involved in real estate for quite a while. My grandmother's the one that actually started that business here, but we kind of taken it to newer heights. Really, my dad has, over the course of me growing up and just the past couple decades, really grown the business. And we're in a lucky, fortunate situation where we're able to build this apartment building. But the reason I bring that up is there are some other contractors that we know in town. We met up with our builder yesterday. We had a meeting with him. It went really well. But while we were there, we found out that one of the guys that we know, and I'm not going to mention his name, killed himself. And not only had he killed himself, there was another guy that was also involved in a plane crash on a jet, and they own some of the buildings around town that are actually quite near to some of our own. And my dad actually introduced me to this guy that committed suicide, and I met him outside of his building not too long ago, maybe a year or so ago. And we were both completely shocked to find out this information. And as we were discussing it with our architect and our builder, we come to find out that apparently he had bitten off more than he could chew. He had been buying tons of property around town, and that we were well aware of certain properties that he had owned. And actually, at one point, my dad had reached out to him about buying a certain building from him, which he absolutely refused. He refused to sell the building, refused to even have any conversation about it. And as we found out more about the situation, it became apparent that he was trying to rapidly grow and expand. He was a contractor, so he was a builder himself, but he was buying these properties. Some of them, which, there was one in particular that my dad mentioned that was over a gas station, and he bought it for over $1 million. And then my dad kind of did some research on it, found out that in order to actually build anything there, you'd have to get rid of the gasoline infrastructure underneath, which was another $400,000. So almost $1.5 million to even start doing anything there before you can even start building there. And so he had taken on all of these different things, and I guess wasn't really either also playing by the rules. Really, he was just going and building stuff, not getting permits, kind of just taking matters into his own hands and trying to do a lot of shortcuts along this process. And so what had happened was that he had gone out to the quarries. We have these quarries here in Indiana, which are quite high up, and there's been actually a lot of people over the past few, honestly, decades that have killed themselves from jumping off onto these things. There's this one called Rooftop that I actually went to back when I was in high school, and we used to jump into the water from some of these quarries. I didn't ever do the tall one because I had a friend who actually broke his arm from jumping off of it. And a lot of people have died. And now there's a lot of cops over there. I feel like they may have even removed some of the water. I don't know the details, but he had called saying that he was going to jump. And I guess the police came there. They had him in handcuffs and everything. And as they had him in handcuffs, he said, "You're supposed to blah, 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 like take me into the station and arrest me or something," but turned around so that they didn't have, as he was engaging them in conversation, they didn't have him secured, and he runs off the edge of this quarry and jumps. And apparently there's a video of it out there somewhere. I don't know. I haven't seen it. I just found out about this yesterday. And it's just kind of wild to me because not only did I met this guy, I knew him, I knew of him, my dad had talked to him, my dad introduced me to him, and we kind of just talked about this, and it's just interesting to me that sometimes with somebody's character, you get a certain impression of them. Like the way that he was conducting his business seemed a little bit odd, because it seemed like he was buying these properties, right? And my dad and I had actually seen some of them. And like I said, the bones or the DNA of some of these properties wasn't good. It wasn't necessarily a smart buy. It was like you'd have to either do so much work to renovate them, or the city here, the historical committee on the city, doesn't want you doing too much changes to certain of these buildings, especially downtown, that have historical quote unquote value. And so what he was maybe doing was going in and kind of just flying in the face of that and making changes to these buildings regardless, apparently. I mean, that we found out that he definitely was doing that with some of them. And like I said, taking shortcuts, taking liberties, and biting off way more than he could chew, because when the mortgages and the interest rates increased, I guess some of these properties he wasn't able to rent, and the mortgages were too high. And then he's sitting on all these properties that are just leeching like around his neck, unable to do anything, I guess unable to sell them. I don't know the details, but all I can surmise from this entire story is that he was in such a tough place mentally. He might have had other mental conditions. I don't know. I didn't know him that well. I'd only met him in passing. But when you bite off more than you can chew, when you fly too close to the sun like he was doing, it can end in tragedy. And to bring this conversation full circle around to some of the stuff that we've talked about lately, I was talking about subtle forms of disrespect on a recent video. I've been talking about, there's a book called The Courage to Be Disliked, and I'm going to put out that review of that book very soon, going over the 4 big key ideas and takeaways of that book, which is a life-changing book if you really understand and apply that philosophy. In that book, they talk about horizontal relationships and vertical relationships. And horizontal relationships have to do with a sense of collaboration. They have to do with a sense of, look, I'm not viewing this as a competitive thing. We're equals. I'll say thank you if you help me. I will, give you acknowledge your help, acknowledge what you've done to help me, and I will do the same for you. But a vertical relationship is looking at yourself as either inferior or superior to the person that you're engaged with. And if you're constantly looking at life, whether you're inferior or superior, what can happen is you develop an inferiority complex, and that can shift then into a superiority complex. Depending on who you're engaged with, depending on where you're coming from when you're observing this person in relation to me, are they better than me? Are they superior to me? And I spoke about this in this recent video that I did about disrespect. But when you come at life from that vantage point of looking at things from a vertical perspective, who has higher status, me or this person? Everything constantly, and I have an uncle that has always done this. He would always try to flex on my dad, my family. And every single time he's like, I'm gonna whoop your ass at squash. I'm gonna do this. Look how much money I'm making. Like literally saying stuff like this in this like very just kind of condescending attitude. And that's something that I've noticed, is that people that have that condescending attitude, a lot of the time it comes from an inferiority complex originally. And they feel inferior to certain people, which is why they feel the need to puff themselves up, make themselves bigger than everybody else, and feel superior to other people. Because when my uncle would talk to his boss, he would come at it with the absolute opposite approach, like completely subservient, completely just like debasing himself for his boss, who he viewed as a superior. Now that my dad has achieved a lot of financial success, that he's grown this business, which my aunt and uncle both told him that he was not going to be able to do, because my aunt, to be completely honest with you, she graduated with an accounting degree from Harvard and worked in banks and stuff. And she did all the math on paper about like my dad's investments in these properties and things like this. Like I said, my grandma is the one that started this business. So my aunt also has houses of her own that she inherited from my grandmother. Long story short, telling my dad that he's never been able to have success with it. Same thing with my uncle. And now that my dad has grown the business and that we're building these apartment buildings, her and my uncle are completely just like changed. And now they look at it like this. And now they almost self-supplicate themselves to my dad and always are kind of like just this weird dynamic now, where it used to be like they used to just be kind of disrespectful, blatantly disrespectful to me and my family, my dad, and now they've gone the other way, right? And it's like, why can't we just coexist without having to constantly have a dick measuring contest, you know? So where this is going with this story about flying too close to the sun and this guy, this contractor, is that I noticed, and my dad noticed this too, that he's just disrespectful. He would, not take my dad's phone calls or ignore them or just be rude to my dad when my dad engaged him about having this business. And when you come at life from this perspective of, who's better, I'm better than you, and I'm gonna be disrespectful to you because I'm looking at myself as like better than you. Again, it stems from that initial inferiority. And that's why you're compensating to make yourself feel better about yourself. That's what bullies do, right? That's on the schoolyard and into adult life, it's the same thing. It is a way to make yourself feel better by putting other people down. And it's not a healthy way of going about things. And in the Courage to be Disliked, it is viewing everything as a vertical relationship, right? They talk about how in the book, a mother would say to her son, oh yeah, good job helping me with dinner. But she's not gonna say that to her husband, right? Because it's a demeaning way of speaking to your husband. You're not gonna go like, good job, honey, really good work. You did a really good, awesome job. Like, it's a bit disrespectful. Now, in the context of this, if you are going about life in this way, what can be said about somebody that is constantly judging themselves in comparison to others? Well, they're not living in alignment and staying true to themselves with their self-integrity of themselves and what they want to do, because they're more concerned with what everybody else thinks. That's where this type of competitive, constantly comparing, measuring your dick against your opponent or person, by viewing people as adversaries or in this vertical hierarchical structure, that's where that stems from, right? Because if you have this courage to be disliked that is talked about in this book, if you are operating with integrity to yourself, going about things by your own moral code, going about things where you want to create a win-win situation for people and looking at people as not as, oh, how can I prove myself that I'm better than you, or how can I demean myself to somehow get a pat on the back from this person that I'm viewing as superior from me, then you will operate from a place where you will naturally do what is in alignment and allow that divine source energy to guide you into making the right choices. This contractor, if he wasn't viewing everything from, oh, how can I prove to everybody, I'm gonna build all these buildings at once, all in town, and I'm gonna buy this building, and I'm gonna buy this building, and I'm not gonna even answer this request about buying my building. The ironic thing is that if he would have been friendly to my dad, if he would have been amenable and even open to the idea of discussing it, let's say that my dad had bought that building. It's actually one of the main buildings in town. It's a very good location. This guy might not have killed himself, because that building being unrented, sitting there, is costing him thousands and thousands of dollars. I mean, it's one piece of the pie. It's not the whole thing, but it all adds up, right? And if he would have been more just open or just a nice, polite person rather than being this aggressive, condescending dickhead, then maybe he would have sold the building, and maybe he wouldn't have found himself in so much debt, with so much debt around his neck that he found himself in. It's just something that I've noticed, and I see this happening time and again with people that have this kind of condescending attitude, and it's like they're barking at you, trying to prove that they're superior to you. It's not a way where you are operating in tune with yourself and in tune with self-awareness. It comes from that being overly aligned with, oh, everybody is perceiving me like this. I'm gonna come off like a hard ass now so that I can be liked by people. I can prove to them that I am this way. And you see this on TV shows and stuff too, like Walter White, for example, in Breaking Bad. At first, he's this very mild-mannered, like, pushover, and he becomes the complete opposite of that, because in both situations, it's the inverted archetype. The shadow is what it is, right? Because Walter White, caring so much about what people think about him, wants to be so friendly and overly polite and bend over backwards and basically be a doormat for everyone. And that is for the same reason, because he cares too much about what people think about him. And the same reason that he adopts that persona, the shadow of Heisenberg, because he wants his family to see him as somebody of strength and power. And that's all that he cares about. He's consumed by it to the point that he puts his entire family in danger. And as much as he wants to say, oh, it's from his family, he admits at the end of the show, no, I did it for me. I liked it. It felt good. It felt good for him to be that strong, powerful man. But that's not a true masculine, powerful man. A true masculine and powerful man is somebody that provides for his family and cares about the security of his family and the safety of his family and protects his family. Doesn't put them into dangerous situations because of his own ego and his own pride. And ultimately, the downfall of Walter White in Breaking Bad is similar to the downfall of, and I'm not going to name him, let's just call him Sam, this contractor Sam in my town. And it has to do with pride, and it has to do with ego, and it has to do with operating from these vertical relationships where, oh, I see myself lower than this person, so I need to be a doormat for them, or no, I see myself as higher than this person, and now they're going to be a doormat for me, and I'm going to make sure that they know their place. And neither way is good. Neither way is healthy. There's somewhere in between where you stand up for yourself. You are polite, you're nice to people, you're friendly to people, but you're not a doormat for them either. You have a backbone, but you're not aggressive and overly rude for no reason either. And that way of being, where you're more neutral, more centered, and you stand up for yourself and you do the right thing, you know the right thing too, because you're not gripping on like this, so concerned about what everybody else's thing is. You're operating from your own moral compass, your own guidance system, your internal guidance system. And that is how you become a person of power. That is how you become, and not a person of power that's like, oh, I'm gonna be powerful and like a king and dominate people, but internal power, the internal power that guides you, that fuels you to be that best version of yourself that you can be. And that authentic self, being true to yourself. So anyways, guys, a little story of mine about flying too close to the sun, how it relates to all of these things, caring too much about what other people's perceptions of you are, and how all of that, the shadow and the vertical relationships, how all of it is interconnected. And all of it is really, you could file all of this under the self-improvement guide, but it's psychology, it's philosophy, it's storytelling, it's all of these things that we can take and learn the lessons from and use them to guide and nurture us, I guess you could say, on that way, on that path of understanding of what it is to be a authentic and reasonable and also powerful, influential person who is able to operate and create those win-win situations, to create that collaborative mindset, to let go of that competitive mindset that requires this. And it can be easier said than done. There are, certain things like resources, for example. Everybody has a certain amount of resources, but like we're moving more and more into a new age where you can scale things. You can there's enough of the pie to go around for everyone. Not everything has to be a competition. You can create win-wins in your life and for the lives of people around you in a way that's respectful, in a way that's empowering to other people, where you get to keep your own power and you get to also empower others. So just food for thought here, and how you can take some of these lessons, some of these stories that I've encountered recently, apply them into your life to adopt that new way of being. Anyways, guys, much love as always. Drop me with a like if you found this video helpful. Hit me with a subscribe if you've not done so already, and I will see you guys in the next video. I'm gonna be dropping that full breakdown on the Courage to Be Disliked very soon, and I'm excited for you guys to check it out. See you guys.